I want to ask you about your dissatisfaction with the responses that you got. And I've been told that whenever anything even remotely sort of unhappy is public facing, there is a giant iceberg underneath it when it comes to the military. Is that an accurate way to look at all this?
Well, I mean, I think certainly the military is responding always to the commander in chief. It is very careful. I think what was really striking, we decided to write Secretary Esper, myself, and Congresswoman Sherrill back in July about just making sure that as the leader of the U.S. military, him and both Chairman Milley would have the opportunity to state very clearly that they weren't going to do things that violated the Constitution. They weren't going to do things that particularly politicized the U.S. military. And we wanted to hear that very clearly. And what was striking was Chairman Milley got back to us on time in August and had much more detailed answers. He spoke about his belief that he did not see a role at all for the U.S. military at our polls, at the election, and that he would support a peaceful transition of power. Secretary Esper's comments were very, very slim. He clearly had, I think, a lawyer write them. And I was looking for more, and I was disappointed that he wasn't really clear about the importance of keeping the military completely out of such a political fight.
Yeah, I mean, even the answer from the Pentagon spokesperson is pretty mealy-mouthed. Pentagon spokesperson Jonathan Hoffman said to Politico, Esper and Milley's positions on the military's apolitical standing, quote, are well known to lawmakers and the public. I mean, they were foggy enough to Milley himself that he made a video that he released to the public, disavowing his own role in the stunt. And Esper is known by people in and out of the Pentagon as Yesper for his compliance with everything Donald Trump asks for. So why isn't the public posture more forcefully disavowing any role for the military in a presidential election?
I can't answer that. I will just say that after the events of Lafayette Square in early June, Secretary Esper came out pretty loudly and said he did not believe the situation warranted calling for the Insurrection Act. He did not believe that that was the right choice. That should be a choice of last resort. And both as the secretary and a former soldier, he did not want to see that happen. And that was a strong statement from him there. So I was kind of hoping that we'd see that same Secretary Esper, right, being very clear that the institution I know he loves should not be politicized, should not have anything to do with the administration of our elections or at polling places, and should be supportive of a peaceful transition of power, should we have one. So I think all officials, senior officials, have decisions they will have to make in the next 3 months. We're going to really be depending on these guys because the president has been very clear that if he doesn't win, it looks like he's going to contest the results of the election. He's been telling us that. That's not an assessment. That's something that he's been saying kind of over and over about voting or mail-in ballots. So we're really going to have these guys under a microscope, and I want them to rise to the occasion. I wrote to the DNI and the Director of Homeland Security as well with the same series of questions because they're going to be in the hot seat and democracy is literally at stake.
Are you aware of any planning among senior military officials for what to do if Trump refuses to go?
I'm not aware of any planning. There's always speculation, but I'm personally not aware of any of that planning. I just know that, the senior folks that I'm in contact with are certainly also reading the president's statements and trying to think about what they're going to do. The attorney general will play a huge role in this. There are a bunch of scenarios that are being looked at, I know, by members of Congress on what could happen if the president contests the election, going to the courts, going to the 12th Amendment. We're thinking through these scenarios because the president has opened the door to this conversation. It's not something I ever thought I'd be thinking about.
I know these aren't questions you ever prepare to ask anybody, and so just to have the conversation is surreal. But the vice president, notably in his debate, refused to commit to peaceful transfer of power. Can you tell us anything about the conversations among your colleagues about how to communicate to the public about what we might be in for in a transition?
Well, listen, most of the scenarios are sort of being talked about in the press, but I think what we know is that it's going to take longer than usual to count ballots. So I'm really focused on sort of what happens when polls close and after, right? Approximately 8 p.m. Eastern Standard and later across the country. We know that here in Michigan, our Secretary of State thinks it's going to take until Friday after Election Day to count all the absentee votes. That period right there and there is going to be very important. What people say is going to be remembered for a long time. So it's just incumbent on anyone in elected leadership from either party to be judicious and serious and realize that our democratic process is fragile and they have a role to play in either supporting it or breaking it. So that's what I'm watching, is what people do in that first week. And that includes elected officials at the state level, right? What are secretaries of state doing from across the country? Are they certifying their elections? Are they adding to this division? Are they sowing discord, or are they doing their jobs and saying, here's what we've got to do. We've got to keep counting and everyone just hold tight. So I'm watching what people in leadership do, because we need them right now to step up.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.